everybody, welcome. How you doing out there? Did you hit subscribe yet? Dustin, have you even subscribed to the show? That's what I need to know. Have you subscribed to the show on your, like, whatever weird YouTube channel you probably have? I do not want to know the search history of Dustin Cava's YouTube channel. This is the Because Cannabis podcast. My name is BC Wayman. That's Dustin Cava. Every single Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube. Thursdays on Spotify and anywhere that you listen to your favorite audio podcast. You got to give us a follow. Got to give us a subscription. Would you be embarrassed, Dustin, to show off your YouTube like play history or even the recommended? Sometimes the recommended goes places I am not comfortable with on YouTube.
Dude, that's what I was just saying. No, I don't fucking subscribe to this shit. To see your mug pop up on the notifications is scary. I couldn't imagine waking up and it being BC's new
Isn't
video.
it the first rule of content creation is subscribe to your own shit? I believe that is one of those rules. You got to subscribe to it. You got to subscribe to it in all the sub Gmails that you've created at some point. You got to take, if you have access to like your work social media account, and subscribe to it. I have not done that always, right? You got to do stuff like that when it comes to trying to be tricky in the industry. But that's not what is on my mind today. We got a great guest today, Dustin Cava. Super excited to talk with Danny Murr-Sloat about what is going on in Colorado with cannabis, what he is doing, and some of the amazing stuff that he's learned. Great story today, too. It's got a good one. Don't cry on me, Dustin. Today, I know you get all emotional sometimes when we have our guests on. Someone recently, I don't try to share a lot of my personal life on social media and whatnot, but my son's been sharing more pictures on the internet, and he put a picture of our cat on the internet. And someone replied, "What breed is that?" Which I had no clue. First of all, I guess I really never even thought about cat genetics. There are like jungle cats and there are domestic cats. That's about as far as my genetics go, right? When it comes to cannabis, I tend to stop. You know how I roll. I get the big three. And I don't even know if the hybrid's a real thing. So we just in the middle. I don't even know if any of it's a real thing these days. Maybe Danny Murr-Sloat can set us straight on that. But I didn't know cats had more genetics. And of course they do. But then it gets really deep into this understanding of, do I want to know? Like, have you ever done a 23andMe? Do you want to know your past ancestral DNA? Do you want to know where you came from and what generations and past iterations of Dustin Cava lineage are like? Or are you just happy the way you are and you don't give a flying AF what came before you and what's working on the inside?
No, my girlfriend did the 23andMe within the last like 6 months. And I just know that if I did it, it would just be like 80% Neanderthal and like
I'd agree with that. 20%. I'm not a doctor or a scientist, but I will play one right now because I have a microphone. Correct in that statement. You're wearing red today, though, Dustin. I'm pretty impressed there. You got a little brighter shade. Usually it's a lot of all black going on today. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know my lineage. I get always asked, probably because of the reddish facial hair, if I'm Irish. I'm not. I'm like English, I guess. I don't know where I'm from. I don't know. Maybe sometimes it's just one of the curse of having those things. Maybe, do you get that all the time, Danny Murr-Sloat, with your kind of reddish facial hair features? What's the first lineage or nationality people assume that you are? And are they correct?
You know, nobody's ever told me. Yeah, I had a big beard at one point. The only time this has happened is I was in Japan on a subway, and some super hammered older American guy just stumbled up. And if you've ever been on the subway in Japan, it's stone cold silent. You know, nobody says anything. So this guy stumbles up to us, and a big beard, and he looks at me and he goes, "So what are you, Al Qaeda or ISIS?"
Oh,
that was the only time anybody's asked me anything about my ethnicity.
Really?
And that was kind of like a way to start that off.
I like the non-judgmental world that you live in, Danny. I feel like people must be judging me all the time. I had a big beard, and the more longer this hair gets, well, it's getting grayer and grayer these days, but the longer it gets very reddish. And so maybe with a bit of my rotundus on my face and some chubbiest cheeks that you've ever, just pinchable in that way. But when you get the beard going long, I automatically get, every time, especially in the last couple months of the year, young Kris Kringle from the old Bass Rankin stop motion Christmas specials. That's my go-to, I guess, insult. And then everyone always assumes I have just wicked Irish ancestry in me. Apparently only Irish people have red hair. That's what I've learned based off. Stop judging people on who they are, everyone.
Yeah,
welcome.
It's mind your business.
Mind your business. We're going to mind your business today a little bit.
Yeah,
Danny
no.
Murr-Sloat with AlpinStash Genetics and Consulting. Thank you for joining the show. I'm DC. That's Dustin. Yeah, lots of people in the background today. It's happening right now. Everyone going on. We're excited to talk with you today. You're in Colorado, right? One of the OGs of the cannabis industry. Is it? I've never been to actually Colorado at all. I mean, I stopped in long before cannabis was legal, so early 90s. I haven't been there since then. Everyone has this image in their head of what cannabis in Colorado is like. Are they accurate? Whatever it is, are they accurate?
Probably. Actually, I don't know what that image is. I can extrapolate with a bunch of people getting stoned in the mountains, and yeah, I mean that's fairly accurate.
I hope that happens. That should happen.
Yeah, it definitely happens. You know what is interesting though is a lot of the beautiful spots in our mountains here are actually it's federal land. It's national forest land. So especially get like Rocky Mountain National Park. So people still get ticketed, searched there. Search and seizures happen there on the federal land. So if you're in the state and you're partaking, just be aware of your surroundings when you're in the mountains.
It's definitely interesting. I have to say that like half of my clients in the web world are from the Denver area and stuff like that. And I've only ever had like a layover in Denver type of scenario. But I will say that it definitely is a cooler vibe. It's definitely my fellow Colorado like clients are definitely the most laid back, the most like seem to be having the most fun within the industry out of most of the other states that I work within.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really chill vibe here for a long time. It's gotten a bit more professional and corporate in some spaces, but that still remains. And overall, Colorado is a very chill place. Denver's a big city. It's got big city vibes and just kind of the hustle and bustle. I'm not really a big city person, but where I'm at in the Boulder area, it's really chill. And I love it here. I have lived in the same county my whole life. The only time I moved out was a recent stint in Canada for a couple of years, and we moved back. It's hard to leave when you've been here so long.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, you grew up in Boulder, and people may have assumptions that everyone in Boulder likes weed, but you came to cannabis like a lot of folks. Well, not a lot of folks, but I would say a small amount of folks, but the passionate folks who do through, a more plant-based medicine aspect. You grew up outside, you were part of that. But you had, when you started in your early 20s, started to have some more stomach pains and issues. Let's talk about that a little bit, Danny, kind of what that was like for you, like going through that process. Were you already using cannabis when this happened, or was it issues and then led to the treatment, or was it kind of had issues and the treatment kind of paralleled as you were going through and dealing with those conditions?
Yeah. First off, I'll just my kids are in the background there, so you might hear some snippets of life.
No, that's
going
all right.
on,
My cat's made appearances. We've had some awkward things happen in the background. But
we've had some
happens,
chickens
folks.
in the background.
Chickens attack the camera. Life happens.
And you know what? Honestly, this is what cannabis looks like. I mean, It doesn't mean you're not a family man. It doesn't mean that, this is how life works. And so we more than, approve and enjoy it. So even if you have to mute yourself for a minute and go and hang with the kids for a sec, that's okay. That is life.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So growing up here in Boulder, I definitely experimented with cannabis, in high school and had a lot of friends that did too. And then sort of after high school, I didn't really partake very much. And as you started to say, shortly after I turned 21, I woke up with pretty crippling stomach pain and was hospitalized there. So I got some. This is the snack of choice right now.
Oh, snacks!
I can't say I blame him.
Somebody just got to give him a good snack.
Yeah. So, anyways, so I was hospitalized, undiagnosed stomach pain, and kind of sent home with a script for Vicodin. Took that and went through a slew of doctors, gastroenterologists, neurologists, and nobody could kind of figure out what was going on. Eventually, I ended up seeing a physiatrist, a pain doctor, who this is about probably 3 months after the initial hospitalization. And hang on just one second.
If there was anything to talk about, it's definitely unicorns.
Unicorns.
Unicorn cookies. Yep.
Eat a unicorn
So
cookie right now.
So I went and saw this physiatrist, and pretty quickly, within that first appointment, he said, "Well, do you want the big hammer for pain control or the little hammer?" I'm thinking, like, I don't want to be in pain, So
Yeah, with like no tools, sir, no tools at all.
Yeah, I'll take the big hammer. I want to control this pain. And he switched me to fentanyl. This was in the early 2000s, and the opiate crisis was there. So I left that appointment with instant release fentanyl in the form of a lollipop and like a 24-hour patch. So from that period, things just sort of got pretty crazy for me. I spent a lot of my 20s just on a ton of pain medications, seeing this doctor the whole time. Did a lot of various therapies, injection therapies. He had told me it must be a nerve problem in your back. So, epidurals, post-radiofrequency, frequency, nerve ablations, all these things to try to contain it. Meanwhile, you steadily up the dose of pain medication, and my life kind of steadily ground to a halt. And pretty soon it was medication for the side effects of the pain medication and medication for the side effects of those medications. And, in this time I developed a nerve impingement issue in my neck, which I actually attribute to I was sleeping like 16 hours a day because I was on so much pain medication. I did the math once, and in a 24-hour period, I was taking something like 3 or 4 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. And, that would be like if you took that at one time, but it was spread out over a 24-hour period.
It's so, I mean, it was in that time frame, right? Like that's part of, and there's been some great like documentaries and things that have come out recently about this, even a couple of scripted shows like Painkiller and stuff. But during that time, I mean, I'm still taken aback that it was in a lollipop form for all the shit cannabis gets about how its product is. Like you were in an era when Vicodin and painkillers and opiates were handed out like candy, literally like candy. I am dumbfounded that they gave you a lollipop fentanyl.
Yeah,
And you pack
I
it.
mean
Wow.
that's the form it came in, and it tastes like if you've ever had the Lickamade, like those little white sticks. That's what it tastes like. And actually, I subsequently, like years later, when I was kind of recovering, I had to go through a lot of dental procedures because I just had, tons of cavities because these pops are sitting in your mouth, and it turns out that was a thing that people faced, a lot of issues with that. So it's literally candy. I remember that it came with a book, like a cartoon book on like how to prevent your kids from getting it. And like, I had no idea at the time. Like, I didn't know anything about fentanyl. I broke my arm once, and I had a couple Vicodin for that, and had a nose surgery and had a couple Vicodin for that as I was growing up, wisdom teeth things. But that was all. And so I growing up, I had really bad asthma and spent a lot of time seeing doctors, in the medical world, in hospitals, like in very benevolent, well-meaning and awesome doctors. So that was like, I walked into all this with just that idea that that's who doctors are, and they're there to look out for me.
And I mean, a lot of people feel that way. I think that's a very common misconception or common thought for people. And I think that's part of what happened during that era, and why still so many rural areas, we have that heavily where we're at, Dustin and I, especially in Southern Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, the Appalachians, West Virginia. I mean, they're still really dealing with the fallout of the opiate crisis that happened there. And it was because they were educated, but they had money to make, and all sorts of other things happened, but it did get a lot of people hooked and had a lot of negative effects. And I think you went through that same thing, right? Like you really, I think, started to struggle.
And there's this additional stigma to not following through with the doctor's orders or suggestions. Like it's not just
there's literally like follow the doctor's orders. It's like a campaign. It's like a marketing slogan.
Exactly. And if for some reason you're still not getting well, it's because you're not following the doctor's orders enough, or, you know, taking their suggestions. And it's like, no, you're just having me on so much drugs right now and so many different things. We don't even know what's the real cause of the issue anymore.
Yeah. And that's so essentially that's, you know, what happened to me. So here I was, you know, I had to get a series of 3 surgeries to relieve my nerve impingement. It was thoracic outlet syndrome. And fortunately, you know, that's all resolved, but I you know, had 30% nerve damage in my hand. And so this whole while it was just like, you know, pain medication on pain medication and just turning up everything. And, you know, and then, you know, your life, like nobody can just be a functioning person through that.
Right.
The insidious thing is that you feel like you're fine. You feel like you're not like, you know, impaired. I felt normal because it was like a slowly boiling thing.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and now that I look back on it, it was like, you know, living in the upside down world. And like, I had no idea. So, eventually, I went and saw another doctor, and this doctor told me that my original stomach problem was something called pelvic floor dysfunction, which, you know, now, like, I know a lot more about. You know, you go see a physical therapist that specializes it, have a couple of uncomfortable manipulations, and you know, things tend to settle down there. And but I, you know, but that kind of the stomach problem faded in the background as I was dealing with these nerve impingement issues. I also developed a non-cancerous base of skull tumor that had a pretty decent surgery to get rid of. And so kind of out of desperation, just locked in this, you know, this upside down world, you know, in 2009, my dad came to me and he said, you know, cannabis is now medically legal. And I think that you should really try this. And, you know, it was interesting during that time of taking all those opiates. I feel like it's sort of like the opposite of cannabis. And so when I had tried cannabis during that period, I always had pretty bad experiences, you know, nausea, vomiting, or paranoia. So I was pretty hesitant to try cannabis, but you know, I was just kind of out of desperation. I decided to get a card. I had a really good friend that came back into my life, a childhood friend who was a big consumer, and you know, he kind of helped put me at ease, and you know, did a lot to help. You know, like, hey, like, let's get high and go like hiking, or let's get high and, you know, watch something fun. So it was just like a better, you know, I know about set and setting, so you know, kind of added to that. And so I got my medical card in September, and it took me a little while to actually ingest. So, you know, I went to my first dispensary right around November, like kind of Thanksgiving time. I got free clones with my first purchase, and you know, the very first time that I smoked, I felt pain relief that I hadn't felt in the entire, you know, 8 years of taking opiates and taking everything. And as I began, I had always had this idea that I was gonna somehow get better. I was always optimistic about it. It was something I always strived for, and just knew. So as I started finding pain relief, started kind of getting up, started growing these plants as a form of therapy. You know, I began to just, you know, have pain relief and take myself off of these opiate medications, and then off of, you know, the medications I was taking for the side effects. And you know, that's kind of how I began to recover. And what I later learned is that there can be a thing that happens with people if you take opiates and you have like unspecified muscle pain. You can actually begin to make the pain worse, and especially if you become sedentary, like I was. I mean, I'm not joking that I spent probably 3 or 4 years like almost entirely in bed or in front
Yes.
of a computer.
I know that one. I mean, I remember when I was 18 or 19, they said I had the back of a 65 or 70-year-old, you know, and it was the same thing. It was, I had to it hurt so much to wake up in the morning I would almost have to crawl to the shower to allow the hot water to hit me just to get the muscles in the back moving a little bit. But then you're sleeping, and that constant sleep is actually hurting me even more than anything else. And yes, it's a constant battle when you're just trying to relieve the pain, but then you're creating pain from relieving the pain, and it's madness. How long did it take you to be able to, when you started using cannabis, to when you finally were able to say absolutely no opiates, this is all I'm going to use to medicate?
It was probably like 3 months, maybe 3 or 4 months, maybe. I don't quite remember.
That's incredible.
The time
That's a pretty
frame.
quick turn. That's a pretty quick time frame.
Yeah, it was really, it was like, and the other thing that cannabis and specifically cultivation did was, just kind of plug me back into life. And so I was getting up, I was enjoying tending to my plants, I was enjoying being outside, I was enjoying hiking and spending time with my friends, things that, I had found no enjoyment, and kind of had no friends at that point. So like, I began to like, this is what's helping. These things are not helping, and they're preventing me from being kind of present and doing the things I want to do now. And I just, I got myself off and pretty rapidly. And, I remember the time, there was a time I was like, okay, I'm on a low dose. I've been on these for, 8 years, but I'm on a pretty low dose now. Like, I'm just going to stop. And like, if I feel any withdrawal symptom or whatever, I will just smoke, or ingest.
Mm-hmm. And
so what if I don't remember this week? Like, and that's more or less what happened. And it was pretty rapid, getting off of it. I lost, I had always floated between 125, 130 pounds throughout high school and stuff. And I worked my way up to like 190 pounds during all that time. So I dropped back to my high school weight pretty quickly. So like, lost 60 pounds and, just plugged back into life. And
what was the reaction from like all these folks around you, like your family members or even friends who had watched
even the doctors that you had been going to?
Yeah. What was that reaction like when they had to say, I would imagine 3-4 months after this fact, they're like, oh my God, Danny, you look great. Like what's like, you clearly, and when people know when you are going through things and they hush and they get it right. So people know. And so there had to have been this reaction like, oh my gosh. And then you have to drop, plant bomb and say, this is what I believe has been the cause, which you then turned into, we'll get to in a second, with AlpinStash and your consulting, and you started getting super deep into the science of it. But what was the reaction from families, friends, doctors, when you pulled back the curtain and were like, I just smoked a lot of weed, bro, and I got better?
Yeah, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. It was undeniable, the change. When I started dating who's now my wife, she went to my parents' house at the first time and saw a picture of my brother's wedding when I was kind of deep in it of me. And she was like, who's that? Who's your like really large, overweight, kind of sickly looking brother? Like it's so, it's like you didn't even recognize me. The doctor question is actually an interesting one. So I had seen my primary care physician that I had seen since I was probably 15, saw my parents, saw my grandparents. They got to, at one point, I was going to have a surgery on my neck. I went for a doctor appointment and they pulled me into the room, the PA that I saw, and then his boss, who was the doctor, they pulled me into a room and they said, this is madness. What's going on in your life is chaos. Like, you either need to leave right now into a treatment facility, or we're not going to be your doctors anymore, because we just can't do this. And, to be fair for them, they weren't prescribing much of the medication. And I think they were pretty hopeless and didn't know what to do with me. So, that appointment actually had happened to have had my appointment lined up to get my medical card later that day with a different doctor. So I kind of was like, it was a really taken aback moment. I felt pretty betrayed by them. And I left that appointment. I went and got my red card and a medical card, and that doctor that I
Is it
saw
from like
there.
a Dr. Green Thumb or Dr. Bluntenstein or some?
I could only hope so.
No, I wish it was from a doctor that was kind of a pay for prescription type of doctor. And
He didn't have the name, but he had the resume of Dr. Bluntenstash as well. Like they're basically one's got the name, one's got but they're doing the same thing. It's all like, here's your chronic pain card, sir.
Yeah, and it was interesting because he was also paid for, like you obviously need to have a medical need, but if you needed something, maybe your doctor wasn't going to give you go see him, and if he deemed you had a medical need, he'd write you that prescription for whatever it was, including
It's a good
cannabis.
dude to know, by the way. Good dude.
Yeah. He was at that time. He was a very good dude to know. So kind of, I would say he was not the most attentive primary care physician though either. So after I kind of got myself off of all these meds and in a better headspace, I wanted to see this doctor that I'd grown up seeing that I really trusted again. And I went back to his office and I was checking the weight, getting my weight checked or whatever in the background. And the main doctor, the one that kind of confronted me and did this intervention, like walked past and did a double take that I will never forget. Because he had no idea I was coming in, probably thought he'd never see me again. And just the differences were so shocking. So from that appointment on, I talked a lot about cannabis with them. And anytime they had questions, that other patients had expressed, it was still early days. I was the person they came to and kind of held up as a success story. So for me, it was nice because like the differences were so night and day and so stark, from a place of like, kind of like just slow death to a place of just like life. Like you can't deny that. And, fortunately where I'm from, like I didn't really have any pushback, but even if I did, it would have been like, I don't care what you say because like you want to see these pictures.
Yeah, I just hiked last weekend and saw this spot. Like, fuck you. You're never gonna be able to say something to me that is gonna make me feel guilty over the fact that I'm living life again. Like it just.
Yeah.
So it's one thing though, Danny, and this happens with some folks, and you've been able to transition with what you're doing now with AlpinStash. It's one thing to say, look, I'm feeling better. I'm smoking some weed. Finding some good stuff. Maybe I'm starting a diary and I'm documenting and saying, hey, this particular strain's making me feel this way. So you're starting to learn a little bit. Maybe you want to grow a little at home. You're like, yeah, I'd like a little bit cheaper medicine. I get all that. But when do you think about, or when do you decide, like, man, I really, really like this? Not just like I like the way I feel, but I'm starting to understand some scientific aspects of this. I'm starting to break it down. And not only that, but man, I really like this world. What was that transition from, I guess, patient, consumer, to where you're pushing now? Was it quick to AlpinStash? Did you have to work in a dispensary for 3 months to realize that's a terrible job? Like, what was that transition like from I'm feeling a lot better, I need to tell more people about this, I want to evangelize about cannabis, I feel that, tell your friends and family, to I think I can make a little cheddar?
Yeah. So, this, my whole pain medication and journey started again shortly after I turned 21. I hadn't gone to college at that point, and and I spent most of my 20s in various states of unwell, I'll just say. So I didn't really have career aspirations or hopes. I had always found gardening therapeutic and really enjoyed that. So when I got these free clones with purchase, my first purchase, and I just was like, well, I'll grow these, and just see. And then as I began to see, the healing power of cannabis and how, legit it was, and if it could help somebody like me, this wasn't just going to be a fad industry. Like this is really a real thing. And, I quickly just was like, if I can focus on learning to cultivate, sorry guys, hang on just 1 second.
It's all good.
There's definitely there's an interesting thing because we hear that a lot, BC, about we see that a lot where it transitions or changes someone's life so immensely that they start becoming the largest advocate. They battle for it. They're at the state house arguing for it. They're telling all their friends. And I don't really hear that with other medications. I don't hear someone who's fucking taking Adderall right now and it's changing their life and it's helping them immensely or something else. And they're not on the state house arguing for more Adderall usage. They're not.
It's that same thing with all vices though, right? Like everyone, when you get into this world, and that's what separates to that part with the cannabis is you get into this world. We're kind of talking when everyone's like advocating for it. No one's ever been, hey, my grandmother was at the casino last night and she's feeling so much better that she spent $1,000 on the slot machines. I wish we'd have more slot machines. And people don't advocate for that. Like, no one's ever fighting for, we need more higher percentage beers. There's something about when people consume it and they have a positive reaction, which tends to be, as long as and there is overconsumption, of course, but there tends to be this positive reaction to it. But it's that separation, Danny, of evangelizing and preaching and advocating, which is what makes cannabis so cool, to really getting to where you're at now, to where you are on a molecular level, literally dealing with this plant and trying to specialize in this industry, trying to teach other people what like trying to really educate folks on the intricacy of the plant.
Yeah, and those other things you brought up, like one of the differences of cannabis too is that there's lots of, there are people that advocate for the use of Adderall, but they tend to be lobbyists and
yes, those are kind of like right. Those are very much. There's always ulterior motive to a lot of things, but yeah, for sure. So that's a whole different.
We've had to do it ourselves, and I've like that. There's been a lot of people that have just done so much advocating that I'll be forever grateful to. But so anyways, I started cultivating this plant, and it was so fundamental. The cultivation aspect of it was so fundamental in my healing. It gave me a reason to get out of bed. I didn't know what I was doing. I was working in really hot tent in my my kind of downstairs, and just sweating my balls off because lifting. I had no idea what I was doing, making all the mistakes, and that helped me lose weight and helped me get up, and it gave me a reason to get up, and so I began to think to myself, I love doing this. I see the need that there will be a need for cultivation. If I can teach myself this, I can give myself a career, which was very inspiring because I had no career path, no career aspiration. So I have ADHD and I can hyper focus on things. It's can be a superpower. And in this case, that's just what I did. I just focused on cannabis and focused on cultivation. And, in 2010, I got a job at a dispensary. It was a family friend. And after a few days, I was talking to the customers too much because I have a lot to say about cannabis and health. And they were getting their grow kind of up and going. And that's where I wanted to be. So they switched me to that. And that was my first taste of a commercial facility. It pretty quickly is a very common theme where you get promised a lot and, monetarily too, and then none of it happens and you end up just kind of grinding it out. And I could see that early on. And I quit that job. I began taking horticulture classes, trying to legitimize my knowledge and just kind of add that scholastic twist. I got a job at my local grow store and kind of augmented my knowledge that way. And meanwhile, my best friend, Evan, who helped me with cannabis, I talked about before, he became my roommate. We were growing together. He, also got a job at the grow store, and we were kind of like, we should start our own thing. So we started working towards opening what became AlpinStash. Took about 3 years of work to get everything set. In that time, I got a job at another family friend's cultivation facility, and that one was even worse. That cemented in my mind, like, if I want to do this in a sustainable way,
on my own.
for my sanity, I've got to do my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because these two other positions that should have been at least somewhat better because I knew the people, were just terrible. So we eventually we opened AlpinStash, got licensed in 2014, had plants in 2015, and then went from there. So we were a small scale cultivation facility, dedicated to craft cannabis and a big focus on breeding. So organic inputs, living soil, our kind of approach was, if we could buy it better, we probably would, because we're not, we can be a little bit lazy.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to make things that we wanted to consume. And just a focus on getting better, because that's, kind of the drive behind cultivation, is you just want to produce the best that you can. Started consulting for the cultivation industry in kind of informally, but then throughout the years, and then really focused on it in 2019. In 2020, I got hired to be a consultant for a large cannabis company up in Canada, and went there in 2021 to Sundial. It was a
You went full
480,000
committal,
square
huh?
foot.
When you got
What
hired
was
to go,
that?
when you got hired to go consulting in cannabis in Canada, you didn't just like visit. You went full in. Like, let me get my passport updated, dual citizenship, all that.
Oh
shit.
yeah, yes. No, I mean, so I went there as a consultant. I left there with a job offer, and I had a 1.5-year-old at the time, and my wife was pregnant. And we decided to say, let's see where this goes. And so we moved up to Canada. And with my wife was like 6 months pregnant at the time, and our kid was 2. So we moved, and I was the director of cultivation for what's now SNDL at their old facility for a little over 2 years, and then I moved back here. Excuse me. And in October we moved back. They kind of the Canadian cannabis industry is a whole interesting thing. But there's been a lot of downsizing, and so my facility was part of that.
Well, they went big, right? They go legal in 2018. They think all the worlds are cannabis, right? We're going to have buds growing everywhere. We're going to have giant plants. Everyone in Canada are going to get high. Trudeau's going to be partying at the parliament with all sorts of bud growing everywhere. And it was working for a while. And then they had all these big companies, Aurora Nordic and Canopy Growth. But then they are... Canadian cannabis is very much an Icarus to the sun like story. And I think, if I'm being honest, Danny, I think the reason no other, I guess, first world type countries have ever really pushed and legalized yet is Canada didn't really set the bar well. Uruguay at 13, they got their little movement. They get adult use. It's all legal. It's a small potato. Everyone's like, all right, Uruguay. They give them a thumbs up. They're like, nice job. We don't even know where your country is. No offense, Uruguayans. I don't think that's what they're called. But Canada's right, big power goes in, legalizes it. Within months, you're hearing Germany's going to legalize, all these people. Those headlines, Mexico is going to legalize, all still happening. Hasn't happened yet. No other major country. And in the US, we're on the verge of rescheduling. I mean, we're taking baby steps. It's a dub. We'll take it, but it's baby steps. But Canada didn't really set the bar well. And so I think it's a precautionary tale now for other countries. They're like, Canada, right?
Well, from my point of view, and it was interesting, like there was a lot of things that Canada did right.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of
Canada's bad.
In terms of the legal part of it, coming from here in the States where, I'm in Colorado, so I've got Utah and Wyoming, bordering, and Nebraska, Kansas are right around there. So if you go many directions from Colorado, if you drive a number of those directions, west to Utah, north to Wyoming, east to Kansas, like what we do is, very, very illegal. Crossing state lines, flying with cannabis is still potentially jailable. And, in the banking situation for businesses, to go into Canada where you can...
I was going to say, things that they have done right is establishing safe banking. The idea that I could use certain even shopping platforms to build off of as a base to start my online stores or start some of those transactions, make that a little bit less friction there. There's some powerful moves that are being made and have been made up there. as you see cannabis moving at the rate it is, you know, a cannabis year is quick. Things change. Technology changes rapidly right now in this industry. How are you finding the balance between being a parent, a husband, staying up on the new technology, and feeling like when you're consulting or you're doing the things you are with some of your clients that you are staying up to date in a way that's really going to be beneficial to them and not have the science or the technology change or be so obsolete by the time it gets implemented?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you definitely got to do your due diligence and kind of you know, I mean, there's lots of forums out there. There's magazines. You know, there's some pretty trustworthy science that's now starting to kind of come out. But you know, at the heart of it too, you've got to understand where you're learning from, because there's a lot of kind of misinformation and branding it in the grow space in particular. But you know, one thing that I've found that's really helpful for my clients is that there's kind of you know, I get one of the scenarios in which I get hired is, you know, we have an established facility, we have established SOPs. You know, it's not working. Can you kind of come here and help us figure out what we're doing wrong?
Yeah.
And generally, when I go there, it's people have strayed so far from the fundamentals of cultivation and of cultivating, you know, successful products, that it's really like a return to basics. I mean, you know, while there is a lot of technology, you know, fundamentally, you still need a good light source. You still need good environmental controls. You still need good watering habits and good, you know, especially in a commercial space, canopy management. So, you know, manipulation of the plant within the grow space. You need to have a solid IPM, you know, integrated pest management kind of SOP. And those are not really, a lot of those are, you know, not as much technology based. Like, sure, watering, you know, you've got automated watering systems, and a lot of people kind of have a handle on, you know, on that system. And lighting, you know, there's so many different changes in lighting, and, you know, but people are still really successful with HPS lighting and, you know, an LED too. So, you know, you kind of cover those bases, and then it's really a dive into those fundamentals. Like, are you controlling the environment well? Like, you know, how are your watering habits? Like, you know, it doesn't matter if you can send water as much or as little as you want whenever you want, but are you doing it right? You know,
Sounds
is
like a
your
lot of it
personnel right?
comes back to the human side of it versus the plant side. It comes back to just basic good old like human business work ethic principles to dot I's, cross T's and such.
Yeah, and you know, one of the most impactful things I learned in my horticulture classes was, you know, the idea that, you know, don't try to grow the plant, because the plant knows how to grow better than we do. It knows how to grow, right? They've evolved to do their thing. So just try to keep the environment healthy, you know, keep the inputs healthy, keep the grow media, like what's happening in the root zone healthy, and let the plant do the growing. And so, yeah, to your point, I mean, like we, you know, especially on commercial scales, like we have an ability as people to really overcomplicate and fuck things up. And yeah, so that's, you know, again, it's important to be apprised of all the new technology and, you know, kind of all the new products and, you know, all the new techniques that are coming out. But more often than not, a focus on the fundamentals helps, you know, most people out tremendously. And so, you know, what I'm doing now, part of what I'm doing now is, you know, content creation. So I'm filming a video series of a home grow, like, and it's just the focusing on the fundamentals. Like, I want people to have an easy and successful harvest with no knowledge. I want it to be, you know, not complicated and very straightforward. And I think most people will find that when you do that, you do pretty well. And people, they can kind of get lost in this. You know, you go online and kind of look up answers, or, you know, try to seek answers, or you get directed in one way or another, and, you know, you go down the rabbit hole of these nutrients or these lighting, and often there's sales pitches behind that. But really, if you just kind of focus on these fundamentals, you know, have decent equipment.
Well, in that place for
plant
education
husbandry
has definitely changed. It used to be, I'm going to I'm going to the hydroponic or the grow store and I'm asking the guy behind the counter and he is my level of information. This proliferation of the internet and being able to search and build a community from anywhere and seeing how quickly the community is willing to respond to a question about what is happening. Take a picture of this pest and have 40 people within the group saying, oh no, this is what I did to help solve this problem. Or
yeah, you put a picture of your grow and stuff on Reddit. There's about 1,000 strangers that are going to offer you about 1,000 different diagnoses of what's happening.
Absolutely. There's so much power in that content creation. What is drawing you to find the love within that space to say, not only do I want to help these large scale grows change their process or reinvigorate the things that they're doing to make them better, but I want to go down to you, the small guy with 5 plants, with 10 plants, and change your world. What drives that when you've worked in such a money, not money driven, but when there are true stakeholders on the line with some of the decisions you're being made to want to go back to the roots to end the individual?
Yeah, so that was me, and for a long time, and because cultivation was, I mean, it's one of the things that saved my life, right? Like, so you talk about stakeholders, like there are some stakeholders, like that person who maybe this is their therapy, like that's a stakeholder, and it might not be monetary, but that's my passion. And starting out, it was hard because I'm a nerdy person. I'm kind of awkward, especially then. I was like learning how to be social again. And so I never found that person that was approachable in the cultivation space that made me feel at ease. And so like, I want to be that because that's who I wish that I had access to. And really, like, consulting on a commercial scale it pays the bills, but consulting, I'm sorry guys.
You're awesome, man. There is something, especially now that Ohio is finally able to start growing, and we see a lot of people that think content creation in this is more about, oh, it's my strain reviews, bro. This is my, I love the idea of really
right now. If it got views, Dustin, if you would subscribe because we get strain reviews, do we need more strain reviews in that area?
I don't think so, man. I think that there is a definite vacuum in good, proper knowledge that where you really are truly able to speak to the individual and having that provided access to like have a question being asked to you. There is real power in that.
Sorry, I had to change locations. My
it's all good. We're talking with Danny
died, and
yeah, it happens. Danny
in the background.
No, it's all good. We're talking with Danny Murr-Sloat. We're with his company there with AlpinStash. You can check him out. We'll have the link below in there. Doing all sorts of stuff with genetics, doing all sorts of things with consulting, looking on creating content in those craft creations. I have obviously we'll get you going here, Danny. You got a bunch going on. What is the new? And does it matter? The new like hotness in cannabis, like when it comes to genetics, like we had David Downs on from Leafly. We did the strain of the year. It was permanent marker. And it was the first time. And maybe it was because hearing about this strain for an hour and talking about it that I searched and went and tried to find a specific strain. I feel like I'm like a lot of consumers of the plant. I'm a cost. I'm a convenience guy. I sort price low to high when I look at my dispensary menus. But what is the strains? And permanent marker was good, by the way. I don't know if you've had any yet, Dustin. What are the strains and the new hotness out there that you feel are really either next level types of things that people are putting out? Maybe it's technology. Like what is happening cutting edge? What should we look out for in the next few years in the industry? Is it specific strains? Is it technology? What's it looking like in the future?
Yeah, so I think for everybody, it's a little bit different. For me, I love genetics, and part of what I do, I spend a lot of time breeding and I'm licensing my genetics. So, I'd give myself a little plug and say, AlpinStash got some great gear. I think the new thing in genetics, as far as like that I get excited about and that my friends get excited about, it's actually bringing back some of the old school classics and not only bringing those back, but adding them to the mix of the genetics we've been working on, because There's a lot of great genetics out there. There's a lot of great breeders, and a lot of it, there's the cookies, the gelatos, all of that stuff. Like, they're good, but a lot of what's out there today are kind of remixes of remixes of remixes. And some of those original things that, Blue Dream, even White Rhino, White Widow, AK-47, those ones that were just like so nostalgic for people. Like, that's what excites me, and seeing how those mix with, Orange Oblivion, the what I've created, and Cookie, my creations and my buddies' creations. Like, that's what we're looking forward to. And I actually hear a lot of people saying, they miss that. And so
we're
that's
That's
tired
a
of
mature
the
market
runs.
vibe, right?
We are
I
truly
think that's a
tired.
mature market. I think Ohio's still very
That's
new, right? And
true.
so these states that are new, you're happy to get whatever weed you don't have to drive to Michigan for at this point. But when you're in a, working on a 15-year some medical market and celebrating 10-year anniversary of sales, 2014, 2024 of the cannabis industry. So now I feel like you've gone through, and maybe Colorado has had that weed's legal roller coaster, right? And now you're on the monorail. Now people are like, I want some old stuff. I want some things. You went through the peak, and it seems like it would make sense after a decade of legal adult use sales, just like alcohol and beer is seen, people want change and some specificness and some classics, and craft beer is born out of, hey, we got beer, but can we do beer cooler? And I think cannabis is in a mature market really goes through that. Is it's beyond the excitement of I can purchase it easily and I can consume it without fear of SWAT teams coming down at me.
Those strains, though, I mean, like, right now we're breeding for high potency, and we're really knocking out a lot of things that some of these legacy and heirloom strains wasn't necessary for a lot of them. How do you, it's a two-part question, because I have family that are breeders too, and some of the things that I see a struggle with is, one, how do you bring back some of these things that say aren't high numbers, but have truly, amazing medicinal uses for them, and grow it on a scale where you feel like you can put that on a shelf and it will sell? And then the second part to this question is, how do you protect your genetics in a world like this? How do you work so hard creating these cultivars and really honing in on these properties that you want to hit on, and not have it stolen in some way? Like, there's a real struggle.
There's a balance between giving to the community and keeping what's yours, and trying to share that proprietarily and financially.
Yeah. So the answer to your first question, what I see is, as like you said, when it legalizes in a state or a location, people kind of go crazy. At first they'll buy anything, and then it becomes this kind of race towards potency, and they see THC as an indication of how strong a product is, and we know that that's only part of the story anyways. And then there's this like weird value thing where it's like, and a quality thing where high THC at low cost becomes a marker of, quality. If it's high THC, it must be quality. And if it's a low price, then I want to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, eventually, like we see here in Colorado, the market matures. And, the issues I have with that whole potency thing is twofold. Is like, number one, if you're just going for high potency, why don't you do extracts? Like,
Yep.
A lot of us enjoy flower. We enjoy the experience. And the number two is the analogy to the liquor industry is like, even if your goal of the night is to get blackout drunk, even if that's your goal, like you go to a liquor store knowing like that's what you're going to do tonight, you don't go buy Everclear, right? Like, or usually you don't buy Everclear. Like it
No, I buy one of those like tequilas in a bottle with pre-mixer shit.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes about the experience, right? And the legacy market, for a lot of the good it's done, it's also had these these weird things like you got to cough to get off, and like, which is totally not true. So
that is not a true statement, by the way. Myth busted, stamped on the screen. We need
super busted, like
super busted.
Like, do you buy a fine whiskey and take a sip and you want to like wince and go, oh yeah, it burns because of quality? Like, no,
you gotta burn to earn, bro. I don't know if I ever heard.
So I think it's just in part a factor of time. And I often wonder like, what did the alcohol industry look like when Prohibition ended? Was it just this rush to get like so hammered off of whatever? And probably, and how long did it take for now? It's like, if you like microbrews, you get And some people want to drink all day, so they get a low potency beer that tastes good, and that's just what they do. So, I think people, you see this hump of trying to get used to cannabis and accessibility, and it's legal and all these products, and then you get into this thing that part of that monorail is becomes like, let me think about the experience and the flavor and how my throat feels, and what, maybe I do want lower potency because maybe I want to smoke all day or smoke with my friends, or like I get awkward if I get too stoned socially. So maybe I want to enjoy at a party, but not be too awkward. And, a lot of the people I know that have been now smoking for a long time have, kind of gravitated towards a little bit gentler cultivars in the first place. And
I'm one of them.
That's a common theme amongst
Yes.
our guests, amongst a lot of folks in the industry. I think the more we've run into a bunch of people who don't even consume anymore, right? They still believe in the plant, but they just have run their course. But I think a lot of folks, once you get that THC go so far thing, then you start to pare it down a little bit for that. We've been talking with Danny Murr-Sloat. Danny, I know you got to go. You got a lot going on in the house today. Thank you for joining us. We'll definitely have you back on. We'll put you in a secure location. We'll get you all nice and set up so we can get past the introduction and really talk nerd out on some genetics and stuff like that in the industry. So we'll get Danny Murr-Sloat. AlpinStash, you can find the link below to check out the website. A lot of stuff going on. When are you going to be launching, or what's your plan with the video series? When should we be on the lookout, and where can they find that at?
Yeah, so if you check out our YouTube channel, I've got a number of videos up there. A lot of them are pretty old, of my old facility, AlpinStash, and some grow techniques. So, still a lot of good content there. I've been definitely filming a lot. So the next couple of weeks, you should keep a lookout on the 3 series. So we got the first one, which is just to learn to grow. If you're new to growing, this is a series that's how to do it cost effective and sustainable and just make it easy. It's like a grow with me. I've also got a series we're releasing pretty soon on growing outside. So if you want to do the kind of same approach, it's easy for the new grower, to have an successful outside harvest. And then, the other thing that I really like to do and really take my platform seriously is to spotlight some of these small craft people just doing their thing. So, I'm doing facility tours, geeking out on cannabis with the right people. So that video series will be coming out, I'd say, within a month. So, definitely check us out on Instagram too, but all these videos will be posted on YouTube, and there'll be a lot of great content there.
And all those links to the Instagram, to the YouTube channel and such will be in the comments. After you subscribe, follow that down, visit AlpinStash, get all your stuff. Danny Murr-Sloat, thank you for hanging with us today for the last hour. We appreciate it. You got a lot of things you got to do right now. So you go take care of your business in there, but we appreciate you squeezing us in today. It was super awesome to see you. Thank you, Danny. We'll say goodbye to Danny there. You guys at home. Sorry, Danny was waving. I cut him off. Rude like that. We got to hit that hour mark. Algorithms. Thanks for Danny Murr-Sloat for joining us. AlpinStash.com. Find the links below. Don't forget, every Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube, brand new episodes. Thursday on Spotify with video. Anywhere you listen to podcasts. We have our social links at MeetWM, at MeetWayward on the social media sites. Dustin Kava, as always, thank you for joining me today, man. And you guys at home, we will see you, everyone, next week. Everyone, take care.
Later, guys.